This is Podcasted Truth. Welcome. I'm about to unleash a stream of consciousness with human beings. We're only human beings having a spiritual experience, and we're spiritual beings having a human experience, both of them. So, in this podcast, in this episode, I want you to follow through with your intuition. Let your intuition guide you. Let me and you come together as one and be we. We are consciousness. So experience yourself as whole and complete. And throughout this journey, along with us, you'll flow and become one whole and complete with all that you are. There were just so many things to say. I had to start the podcast, so I started like I gave an introduction. I don't want to cut the stream of consciousness because I realized like the whole idea of the podcast is building truth by piecing different sides of it so that you can finally realize that it breaks down. Like you're not seeking fulfillment, you're not reaching enlightenment. You're literally just coming back to yourself, being one with being present, and just living life. So I'm looking to my whole like carving out people and not just result based people, like successful people, people of all walks of life. Give their perspective on whatever it is they want to spill out and find out that being you is exactly what truth is, what God is, what all that is, source energy, consciousness, all those names for that grown man sitting in the clouds that helps you about like you give them all the responsibility. So yeah, with all that spiel and introduction, who are you and why would you listen to yourself?
Hmm. Well, my name is Shimna. That was given to me at birth. And I've had an interesting journey returning, I think, to the mindset that I had when I was a child
Mm,
over the last 4 years. And it's always been there. I actually had a realization earlier today while I was at the gym, and it was kind of along the lines of, when you meet someone and you can just feel they're genuine. Like, they just are the way that they are, and you wouldn't change that. You don't need anything from it, right? But then you see people that are really dysfunctional, all gravitating towards each other. Dysfunction feeds dysfunction and
mm,
feeds off of dysfunction.
mm,
But like how you'll often see it portrayed in movies, or you even see stories about it back in the media, or where someone from a friend group kind of goes a little bit off the chain and maybe starts behaving in a way that everyone's like, whoa, what was going on there? And then they go off and they have their own realization, and they come back and they're like, you seem more like yourself. And it just does all the
mm,
time. Someone will get lost in a spiral of dysfunction, whether it's, like an event occurred in their life that traumatized them, and then they built a life in avoidance of that trauma, or trying to avoid experiencing the feelings of that event. And so they've covered it up with drugs and with alcohol and with, sex and sensory experiences that take their mind away from that feeling. But there's only so much hiding and running that you can do before you're going to have to face it. And you can spend so long continuously running, but even the people around you, they're the ones that are saying, like, you don't seem like yourself, because they're the ones that know who you are when you are being genuine. And the rest of these behaviors, they're like, we know this doesn't align with your values. You're doing it because you're trying to avoid feeling a certain way.
mm,
And, like, everyone experiences things that are incredibly uncomfortable. They've got some form. of discomfort that they're trying to avoid. But one person's childhood trauma could literally be like living on the street, and having parents that are drug addicts or going through substance abuse, or they could live in an abusive household, they could have issues with siblings. There could be the kind of trauma that you can really see and look at and be like, that is horrendous. Then on the other side of it, they could live in a mansion and have parents that are absolutely loaded that they never see. And so their childhood trauma is neglect, is feeling unloved, and both are relevant. Both can shape you into a really, really damaged person with the ability to let it go and build something for themselves. And it's like an individual's willingness and openness and awareness that they do have a choice that will determine where they go and what they do with their life.
Hmm. Yes. Yeah. There's this saying, God's will is your will, and your will is God's will, because whatever you choose to do is what God chose to put you through. So, in essence, choose. Just choose. And choose for the sake of choosing. Sometimes you don't have to have a reason. You simply choose. It's for the sake of exploration. And you were saying something so powerful about living in the state of avoidance. Sometimes it's so deep that we avoid the future, we avoid the past, or and and we even avoid ourselves. We can avoid things as big as living, and we're so stuck in this narrow mindset of I'd rather escape from suffering and pursue pleasure than just fuck it, go towards pain and see how beautiful and pleasurably beautiful it is. Sometimes literally crying is like having sex. Sometimes it's fucking it over and just learning how to go through it that makes you feel the most excited. Sometimes it's just falling over that gives you the most beautiful sense of I'm right where I need to be because I've fallen where I need to stand.
Hmm. It's just fascinating. Like that the avoidance, like who taught us? Where did it come from that crying is bad?
Mm-hmm.
That feeling strongly or intensely about something is bad. And I suppose it comes down to the way that it comes out of you, right? Because one person that is feeling an intense amount of love could just be sitting there feeling it, whereas someone that feels an intense amount of love feels like they have to go and do something with it, which might end up smothering someone in a metaphorical sense.
Mm.
And it's,
Love bombing.
yeah,
Yes.
and it's like these feelings can just exist in you without you needing to do anything with it. Like, yes, it is energy. Energy can be put towards something, but it doesn't have to be the first thing that comes into your mind when that emotion arises in you. So, people that are angry and they feel that visceral body reaction with anger, it doesn't mean you got to throw that punch to the person that happens to be in front of you. Like, but it's the same thing with love. You might be, for example, like sitting with someone, having a conversation, and realize that you feel a lot of love in that moment. You might immediately associate that feeling with the person sitting opposite you and be like, oh my God, this is tied to them. Because they have
Oh,
childhood trauma.
yes. That's powerful. That's so powerful. We go through periods of attaching ourselves to everything. It's everything we do. I'm happy because of that. I'm happy because of this. I'm loving because of this. I'm loving because of that. And we're so attached to whatever happened, we outsource the source of what we are. And we are the source. It's like,
Like, And then the next time you're with them, you're like, why don't I feel that way again?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And then we judge them. It's like, why aren't you giving me what you gave me before? Like, why are you not making me
Yeah.
feel the way
Why
you
can't I
like?
turn you upside down and
Yeah.
make you like?
Literally. And yeah. And then we're angry at them. And then it's just like, now you don't make me feel good. Like, you bad now. And then we just poke it at them. When in reality, it's like, you bad. Like, you are bad. And you're not even bad because that's the different perspective of the whole bad thing. Bad is not bad. There is no wrong. In a universe where everything is neutral, nothing is bad and nothing is good. It's just you channeling an emotion in a negative or positive way, attracting and pulling. No, pulling and pushing, actually. Yeah, attracting and just emanating. Like two magnets, like negative and positive come together. Negative and negative push each other out. And same thing with positive and positive. So sometimes you could be really positive with someone that is also being very positive, and then you're like, there's no coming together, so you just got like poof, and both come, like just gotta move out. And it happens with factors too. Sometimes a concert, a retreat, a meditation is just so positive to you that you're already in a such a positive state that it doesn't fit. So it's not you having to project something to it. It's just accepting that it's not for you in this moment. And that's it. It's just this moment. Doesn't mean that the next moment won't happen. In the next moment, there won't be an attraction, a very attractive state where you do come together. And that's how we love to project. We're kind of like projectors. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah. What you were saying about like push and pull, positive and negative, it's also just like whether you want it or you don't will determine what you do with something or how you respond to it. You're like, yeah, no, this one is good. I want that. And it's coming to me. Cool. I can accept that. And you see something that you don't want coming your way and you're like, no. And
Mm.
then you're full of resistance. And yeah, but with
And
sleep, it
there's
comes with,
yeah, there's something I've realized that I felt actually. Sometimes it's like sleeping. I've been a very active person at night so many times that sometimes it's like, no, I'm just so active. I have so much energy that sleeping is kind of like killing me. I hate sleep. And it's like, yeah, you need sleep though. So like, are you gonna just accept the fact that this is something that is pulling you towards it and it's good for you and that's what you have to surrender to? And are you gonna accept it? And then there's like the other side of me that is just like, no, I'd rather have this thing, which I'm pulling towards me because I'm making it happen. I want to force it to happen. And it's not the best outcome. So I love to compare that to sleep because sleep is something good for like every human being because it's a need. Even breathing, like breathing. Yeah, that's the best example. We don't want to breathe at times. We forget we can breathe.
I had that today. Like, I noticed I was out, went for a little walk with my younger sister. And I noticed as I was out there, I was like, I've not taken a deep breath today. No wonder I'm feeling like
Mm.
off. And I took a deep breath and I felt like I had to force it. And once I got to here, I was like, got to there, I was like, oh my God, I've only been breathing to here today. So I forced it, breathed all the way down to
Mm.
the bottom. And it was sticky. Like, I've not been in that space today, but just realized, like, I'm not breathing. I'm holding something in my body and I'm not breathing. And it was just funny to notice because I feel like previously with how life was, I was really prone to panic attacks.
Mm.
And I had really bad breathing, like my whole childhood and through my teenage years as well. And I've done a lot of breath work in the last couple of years, and it's just like I literally didn't have the capacity to take breaths this deep, and it scared the daylights out of me. It scared the shit out of me when I was younger. It was like, I can't breathe, and then I would just have these panic attacks. But now, like, what was so fascinating was the very first time I ever did breath work. I felt in my body all of the sensations that I felt when I was having a panic attack. So, like, I got like a hot flush. My gums went numb. I could feel my teeth tingling. and I get like kind of staticky and my vision kind of blurs a little bit. But I knew that I was in control. I knew that I had chosen to put myself in that space, and that it was so empowering of like, this was usually a feeling that would just overwhelm me entirely, and now I know how to enter that space, which means I know how to exit it.
Mm.
And I have had a few panic attacks since. The last one that I had was over a year ago now. I think it was last May. But even while I was in the midst of that, it was like my body was having a panic attack and my mind was completely still. It was just like, this needs to pass through me, and I am fine. Like, I am fine right now, and I will be fine when it passes through. So it's like I had the panic attack without the panic.
That's so cool. I had it
It was
and I didn't. Oh, that's so
it was so bizarre.
cool. Mm.
Like, I knew what was coming, and I was just like, I have to surrender to this, because if I try and push it away, it's just gonna it'll it's this the whole like, no, but I don't want it, I don't want it, I don't want it.
Mm.
Like,
Yeah.
just let it.
Like a moth to a flame.
Mm.
It's what you need most, and yet it's what literally kills you.
Mm.
Yeah, because it happens. We can also go through like, I really need to breathe, and yet my body doesn't choose to breathe. So it's like, okay, you know what? Fuck it. I'll lose control. I won't breathe. I'll just stay there, having this I can't breathe kind of feeling.
Mm.
And then eventually, like, your body says, like, oh yeah, shit, we're gonna die. So, and then you come back alive, and it's like, oh, I just had to surrender. That was like a kind of the solution for it all. And then you realize, yeah, maybe there wasn't a solution. Maybe the solution was just to forget about it, solving it. Like, why do we solve it? Just let it exist. Give space to it. Just let it exist.
Mm. It's funny. I was just thinking as you were speaking there, like, my approach to so many different areas of my life has shifted in the last few years because my perspective has shifted. And it's less about being perceived a certain way and more about just living life and doing things that mean something to me. And it's really fascinating. Like, literally every single area of my life now, I'm like, I'm just doing this because I'm choosing to. I'm not doing it because I feel like I have to, or because I feel like this is what people are thinking that I should be doing. And I'm okay with being misunderstood. I'm okay with people not getting where I'm coming from. I'm okay with people having judgments about it and questioning it because it's not for them. But then at the same time, having the career that I have, like, I'm a musician. I've been a full-time musician for the last 10 years. So in a way, I am dependent on having an audience. I can tell my audience what my music is about, but I can't tell them how to feel about it. That's none of my business.
Yeah. That was so good. That we gotta quote that shit. Yeah. That was so powerful. I can tell. Oh, I can even repeat that. Yeah, that's so good. Yeah.
Yeah, but like, you just don't know what people have experienced coming into the experience that you're then holding for them. And you would get this like as a transformation coach, right? Where you don't know what a client is bringing to you on that day, but you know that whatever you say to them will resonate with the parts of them that need it.
Oh,
Like, you can't
yes.
you can't like, for example, imagine you structured like a coaching call or a course. Like, say you had a weekly client and you were going to do 6 weeks with them. You're like, week 1 we're going to be happy, week 2 we're going to be embarrassed, week 3 we're going to be sad, week 4 we're going to be angry. But there is no guarantee. You could feel anger, sadness, embarrassment, and happiness in the first session.
Yeah, quite literally.
And it's like, it's nothing to do with you and everything to do with what they are experiencing in that day. You are just meeting with them in the state that they're in and talking about the things that are relevant to them at the time.
Yeah,
And
it's a
so for me,
wormhole.
when people come, yeah, when people come and listen to my music, if they're feeling particularly emotional, they will probably cry. If they're feeling really happy, they'll probably feel really good. If they're in a space of questioning where they're at, they will find a lot of things to judge about me. They
Mm.
might not even register the music because they're lost picking me apart physically, being like, why is she wearing that? Why is her face doing that? This, and this. Why is the sound like this? And it's nothing to do with me. I just happen to be in the space and providing the sound and an experience for them to tap into whatever is present with them at the time.
Literally. And we have five senses. So people could be just watching you. People could be just listening to you. People could just be speaking about you, tasting you in a sense. People could be touching, like just sensorially feeling. People could be smelling, and that's why and how and what they're perceiving. There's five different, gigantic different ways of experiencing life that, like you just said, they could be just focusing on your physical attractiveness. They could just be focusing on the smell of the bathroom near them. They could just be focusing on that cricket that won't stop and they won't shut up. And that's all they're focusing on. And just
Mm-hmm.
paying attention. It literally, like now that I think about it, you're paying attention. Like you're literally just giving your attention. So whatever you value most at that state of being, that's what will resonate with you. So I literally like, now that you bring it to mind, we've created courses on things that we value people should go through, people must go through, people are going to go through in the best way. When in reality, in a perfect kind of world, it should be kind of like those old Viking movies where you have this shack of yours, like lemonade. You have that shack of yours that says, I don't know, tomato sauce. You have that shack of yours that says, I don't know, garlic. And then just people come to you. And if they feel appealed to having garlic, having tomato sauce, having lemonade, well, you just give it to them. And then you are going to have that time where you're roaming around the city and you'll want some garlic. And then that's what you're going to go through. So you're just picking out what you need. It's that sense of, I need to hoard. I need to have more. I need power kind of thing that just made us think that we need to control every single factor of that exchange and giving and receiving flow of the universe type of thing.
Mm, it's really interesting. But talking about it in like that particular context of like when your clients come to you being in a certain space, blah blah blah, when people come to my shows being in a certain space, it's also just life and how people can experience you as a person. So like as I move throughout my day and pass people, people in cars will have an experience of me. People that I walk past on the street will have an experience of me. It could be momentary. And I have experiences of people as I walk past them as well. These days, I actually noticed this yesterday. So I went to Liverpool to watch a couple of friends play, and I was with a very 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 good friend of mine. He was driving us. As we were driving back, we drove past. There were these two kids on a bike. It was like 10 p.m., 11 p.m. at night, and he immediately had this judgment about them being like they're probably troublemakers, or why are they out this late.
Yeah.
And in my mind, and I spoke about this with him, I was like, that's really interesting that you immediately had like an observation and a judgment, whereas in my mind the way that it registered was two kids on a bike.
Mm,
That was it.
mm,
And I said to him, I was like, do you think if you were to go back through all of your thoughts about those two kids, would the thought that you land on be like they're what's wrong with the world, or their parents are what's wrong with the world because they haven't reinforced curfew or blah blah blah? He went on to talk about how like it's kind of the like pretty typical thing of kids their age to be going and causing trouble and blah blah blah. It's like there's no guarantee that that's what's happening. It's just your judgment and your observation. I was like, do you think in a very long-winded way, it's you making you feel better about yourself? Like, do you feel like you are better than them or better than their parents because you can see the error in them? And the fact that there was so much in there
Mm.
just from driving past two kids on a bike, it's like, how much weight are people carrying around every person they walk past, every interaction that they have? Oh, the barista didn't smile at me. The salesperson didn't hold the door open for me.
Yeah.
I also get it when I'm crossing the road, and this is something I've noticed particularly here in England, is if I am crossing and a car is coming and they like decide to stop for me and they're like, yeah, you go ahead. And so I walk, I'm like, cool, thank you so much, that's great. They're really courteous. But if there's a car like off in the distance and I'm like, yeah, I've got enough time to make it, and so I like walk across the road, they speed up. It's like you can only cross and me be happy about you crossing if I decided to let you cross because I'm a good person.
Mm.
And it's like the ego is so
Yeah. Entitlement.
in control.
Mm-hmm.
I find it so fascinating and so funny, and I just don't take things personally anymore if people like yell at me out the window being like, get off the road. I'm so sorry that me walking in front of you is so triggering. Like, I'm actually
I
I'm
love
really
that.
sorry. It's you're welcome.
You're welcome.
You're
Yeah.
gonna get triggered by something because that's the space that you were in. I just happened to be what was there in the moment that you needed to release. So
Mm.
I didn't make you angry. You were angry. You needed a release. I happened to be there. You're welcome.
Yeah, and sometimes you could even say thank you. Like, you could say thank you. Just like, thank you, because now I know what I do not need to release and what I actually feel like right now. So it's a contrast. I've realized sometimes that people scream at me and they're not like it's not me screaming at them, and yet they are so in their mind telling me you're screaming at me, you're speaking bad to me, like the way you're speaking to me, I don't like that. And it's like, wait, hold up, you're speaking bad to me, like you're shouting at me, it's not me doing it. And they're just in their mind, it's like, no, it's you, it's you, it's you. And I've taken it to like literally the extreme where I've let people kind of like take a punch at me just because I wanted to see how much they were willing to accept. And then I realized, yeah, humans cannot accept the fact that it's not someone making you, forcing you, and even
You're choosing to do it.
exactly, it's you who just decides to explode on things that make no fucking sense.
Mm.
And celebrities, I was thinking about this when you were saying, like, celebrities, there's just people that act in movies, and yet we praise them. It's like, no, they're famous. Being famous, being known, it's like, yeah, a lot of people talk about you. Like, yeah. What is it so godly about that that makes you think they're not human beings? Like, what are they? Half angel?
Yeah,
And we're so, like, we forget the fact that we're all human beings.
completely. And I think that has been a huge thing. You know how I said about being able to see my parents as people since I was a kid.
Yeah, same here.
I applied that same sentiment to everyone, figures of authority, people that I meant to look up to, people I meant to respect because of their authority. They're people too, like security guards, bouncers, police officers, people at the airport security, people at border control. They are people
Mm.
fulfilling a role that society has assigned to them, but they are people at the end of the day. And I've not encountered many instances where I am targeted with, like, my rail card expired the other day, and basically I'd bought a ticket at a discounted price when I didn't have the card to validate that anymore. And so I got pulled up at the train station and I hadn't even realized the card had expired. And the guy was like, "Can you renew it now on the spot?" And I was like, "Sure." So I clicked it and it didn't work. And so he tried hotspotting me, being like, "Just try it again." It just wasn't working. And then eventually they were like, "You know what? You can just go, but make sure that you have it validated next time." And I was like, "Yeah, I will do. Thank you so much." Like,
Cool,
I just
sure.
carried on. But you see people getting really worked up about it immediately, or immediately defensive, like, "Oh, I didn't know that," and they're the ones that would get held.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like, I appreciated that they were doing their job. They were fulfilling a role that had been assigned to them, and that's how they make their money, and that's how they support their families. I suppose that's how they support the life that they want to live. It wasn't like, if anything, it was my fault for not checking the validity of the card. But I didn't suffer a consequence for it because I didn't feel like I had a consequence to suffer as well. It was
Yeah,
like,
it just
I
was.
made a mistake. I was willing to take the necessary action to amend that mistake, and then they just decided to let me go. It's interesting, like the way that you carry yourself around people. I'm not met with a lot of conflict these days.
Yeah, and actually, the fact that I've met conflict has led me to believe that it's our protections of who you are. Like if I'm talking to you, who you are to me, that's what will lead to me having an experience with you. If I perceive myself to be lower than you in some sense, then I'll perceive you as highly above me. And it's like markets, for example. I've heard so many business people talk about the markets. It's like we have to appeal to the market. We have to influence the market. Marketing. And then there's a part of me that just says, that you're talking about humans, right? Not just machines. They're like individual humans as a collective acting based on being human beings, right? So you cannot just say the market like it's just a piece of metal, like it's just a thing right there existing. It's something that fluctuates, that has life, that has a heartbeat to it. So when you talk about people, you're literally talking about human beings just like you. So if you're sitting in a throne, you're talking like, yeah, the markets right now they're shifting in a way that we're so powerfully expanding. So now we have to appeal to them by giving them a lot more. And then you start thinking like we're animals. Like you just give us things like you're like a king in a hill, and you realize
Mm.
we're all just human beings. And you can have a security guard crying. You can have a policeman officer taking a dump. You can literally have a president fall on their knees. Like so many presidents have a certain point. Trump, they shot him just like to prove the fact that you are human too. You could die, you bleed, you're human. You just have believed this environment of yours telling you you're human. You're not human. You're godly. You're godly. And then you forget that yes, you're consciousness and you're very responsible. And your godliness is in the fact that you are a human being having the ability to respond. That is being a god.
Oh, it's such a beautiful thing. Like, just realizing that. Like, it takes so much pressure out of the world when you realize it. People just, people are people. As I said before, like, everyone has their own concerns, everyone has their own experience to worry about. And if you happen to move into someone's experience when they're in a particular kind of headspace, all you're doing is fulfilling their frequency in that moment. And it's not personal. You just happen to be there. That experience for them was going to get fulfilled somehow. It just happened to be you in that moment.
And just like that, I can literally just ground it back to the whole podcast thing, for example. Jumping on a podcast, it's just something like, oh, I'm gonna be interviewed. Like it's a TV show. I'm just gonna I have to say this. I have to say the other thing. People do not realize that's the whole idea of my podcast. Like that's why it's called podcast a truth, because it's not podcast that truth as like there's something called truth. No, it's podcast a truth because there's no such thing as a podcast. Podcast quite literally means casting words, casting through a pod, your vehicle, your mouth, you're casting word. So you can say that we're on a podcast and that's why we're having a conversation and we're learning, we're adding value to society. And once again, we're simply being human beings. And that's so valuable because slowly and surely, we're realizing that the most powerful human beings are just human. The most powerful gods are just humans. And just being yourself is quite literally being God. Because you are God, we are God, we're all God.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I would love to end the podcast. And we can continue to have a conversation. So just like, what else would you love to share to society and add value through? Like you didn't just do so much of that already.
I don't know. I love having conversations. I love hearing about people's perspectives and challenging them if they're in a space where you can tell what they're saying isn't serving what they want to feel.
Mm,
But people think so much of it is just outside of them. And no, you have so much more authority. Not authority, but
choice.
there is a, yeah, there is a word that I'm trying to find, but it's not there. Um, oh, and the dogs are being set off. Yeah, you have so much more of a say in how you feel. You can have so much more
Mm.
to do with how you feel than you might necessarily be allowing yourself to at this point in time. Is all I can really say for the general population.
And that's how you can literally just sense the fact that what you say is as powerful as what you do because what you do is a reflection of what you say. I don't know if you realized she had her dogs bark in the background. Did you see how she just swept it off her shoulder and kept going with what she was saying? That's the power of what you say has a really good influence in what you experience. She could have just panicked, she could have stopped, she could have waited. That's what we're all about. Just be yourself and let your responsibility be your ability to respond. And that's how you're gonna live a beautiful life. So that being said, I'm glad to have you over. I was just so glad to have the pleasure to converse with you. And yeah, that'll be that. Any last thing you want to say?
Just thank you. This has been wonderful.
Okay, it was amazing.